Good morning and welcome to the SETI Institute. My name is Doug Vakoch, Director of Interstellar Message Composition at the SETI Institute and Chair of our Communicating Across the Cosmos workshop. And I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy schedules to come to this meeting. Over the next couple of days, we're going to grapple with the challenges of creating messages that could be understandable by an independently evolved civilization living around a distant star. So it's an ambitious project that we have. The SETI Institute has held a number of workshops on interstellar message construction over the years. We've had several overseas, 3 in France, a couple at the SETI Institute. But this one is quite different in a couple of ways. One of them you'll recognize as you hear speaker after speaker and hear a bit about their backgrounds. You know, as I look out over our group of speakers, I see people with backgrounds in linguistics and chemistry and anthropology, philosophy, mathematics, artificial intelligence, engineering, journalism, archaeology, astronomy, history, design, art, linguistics. So it's a very diverse group of people that we have and very appropriate for the ambitious project that we have in front of us. The other thing that's different about this meeting is that we'll be focusing very explicitly on the challenges that we face in trying to create an intelligible message. There have been a number of proposals in the past for how we might create messages, and we'll see some additional novel suggestions in this meeting. But what really sets this meeting apart is a focus on how challenging it may be, but nevertheless, perhaps possible. If you think of interstellar message design in a historical perspective, and compare that with the changes that we've seen in the technology for the search for extraterrestrial intelligence in general, I think you'll see that there's been progress, but in ways it's fallen short. You know, when Frank Drake did his first SETI experiment over 50 years ago, he was able to look at 2 stars at 1 frequency. And now with the Allen telescope array, we look at 9 billion channels and with greater sensitivity. So today's SETI searches are about 1 trillion times more powerful than the first searches a half a century ago. How much more sophisticated are our interstellar message designs? Is it 10 times more, 100 times more? I'm not sure. But I think in ways you will be surprised to find out the sophistication as you hear each other's ideas for how we might go about creating intelligible messages. But also it'll be clear that there's a lot of room to go to catch up with the technology of SETI searches. When we organize the research that we do at the SETI Institute, we often make reference to the Drake equation. This is an equation that Frank Drake wrote over 50 years ago when he was organizing the first SETI conference. It looks at 7 terms that we need to think about in order to estimate the prevalence of civilizations out there that may be transmitting. And we're getting a pretty good handle on some of those early terms of the Drake equation, dealing with planet formation, number of exoplanets, planets that may be habitable. We haven't made as much progress in some of the later terms of the Drake equation, the longevity of civilizations, the evolution of intelligence. But this workshop really focuses on the term F sub c, the fraction of civilizations that have intelligence that go on to communicate. But what's different about this meeting is that we'll be expanding the sense of communication from what we've typically looked at in SETI, where the focus has been more on the development of radio technology or laser technology, the technology that makes possible communication, as opposed to what makes possible an understanding of another independently evolved civilization. So in the next 2 days, we'll see much greater emphasis on the cultural dimensions of SETI. The work that we're doing will also have implications for the broader international SETI community. As you hear each other's talks, you're going to be hearing recommendations for important work for us to do in the future. And those recommendations will guide the final report that will come out of the International Academy of Astronautics study group on interstellar message construction. Now, you have traveled a long distance. Your time is precious. And I just want to thank each of you for coming together for what promises to be an exciting 2 days. Welcome again from the SETI Institute. I'd now like to turn our session over to Jill Tarter, the Bernard Oliver Chair for SETI at the SETI Institute and a trustee. And Jill will be moderating our first session.
Thank you, Doug. Thank you for that welcome, and let me add my words of welcome to all of you. The first speaker is a gentleman that I've known for considerable amount of time. Dr. Al Harrison is a social psychologist who got his BA and MA from UC Santa Barbara, and then a PhD from the University of Michigan. He went to UC Davis in 1967, and he has been there ever since, now currently emeritus from the faculty. And his specialty is human adaptation to spaceflight and SETI and the questions of first contact and how it might all play out. He's the author of 100 papers, 5 books. He's on the advisory board of the Lifeboat Foundation. And this morning, I think we're all going to enjoy his talk, Speaking for Earth, Projecting Cultural Values, across deep space and time. Al?
Thank you. I think I'm all wired up, so.
I'll let you know.
It's a great pleasure to be here. I know quite a few of you, and everybody else I've been waiting to meet. It's all been contact through your papers and by emails. Now, I'm going to be talking today a little bit about interstellar arcs or interplanetary arcs, vehicles containing messages from Earth. And I'm also going to be talking quite a bit about SETI. I mean, this is the SETI Institute. And as I was driving over today, I had what I consider to be a profound additional argument in favor of radio communication. Okay? Now, radio has a lot of advantages, and we'll look at those in a couple of minutes. Interstellar arcs are very, very slow. I read recently that I think it was Voyager's going about 16 light hours from Earth, and of course radio is much faster. But there's another advantage of radio, and that is, unlike an interstellar arc, it can't possibly make a wrong turn on East Middlefield Road. So anyway, thank you, and here we go. Now, this is sort of an overview of what I'm going to be talking about. I think we're at the time of making our presence known. We can make our presence known over interstellar distances. I think it's appropriate and useful for very responsible and capable teams to get involved in this. Otherwise, there'll be the airwaves, so to speak, will be dominated by, I don't want to say random parties, but certainly special interest parties. Active SETI is unregulated and unregulatable. and that if we're going to do this, if some group is going to get together and do this, it requires extremely careful planning. Unlike, say, transmitting Dorito commercials or book announcements or people's emails about sexy actors and actresses or politicians, all of which have gone out into the ether at one point in time or another. And what we do, both in the psychology of spaceflight and looking at SETI, is we look at examples, historical antecedents or prototypes that can help us. You know, we haven't actually done these things yet, but what we can do is we can look for past situations or events that might provide some useful leads. And I believe that time capsules, as the history of time capsules on Earth, has provided some really useful ideas, and that the people who have prepared and deployed, so to speak, time capsules have given it a lot of thought. Well, there's a lot of really good work, and several people here are going to talk about it, that has to do with archaeology and SETI, okay? And how we get to decode messages from the past from dig sites. And in a sense, when we find a dig site, it's a message from the past to the present. Now, it's basically unintentional, although there may occasionally be some sort of monument or statue that was meant to inform future generations of the greatness of a military leader or some ethnic group or whatever. But basically, what you see is what you get, and it can be a little bit rough and difficult to deal with. Time capsules are planned messages. They're planned messages to the future, and they've been carefully put together to convey a sense of things at a particular point in time. You know, it may be something very, very specific, such as 1957 Plymouth was buried to inform people in 2007. It was unearthed and it was covered with mildew and had been run through by sewage and water and so forth because the capsule wasn't very well made. Or it could be something really quite grandiose, intended to inform very future generations about the accomplishments, say, of the nation. Such was the bicentennial time capsule that was stolen while President Carter was giving an extended speech about it. But so that was not going to be found. Now, there's a lot of parallels and differences between the dig sites and the time capsules. One is accidental, pretty much. You know, again, there could be a monument or tablets or something in there intended for the future. Time capsules are planned. You have to deal with nature at the dig sites. Well, you do with time capsules, you can construct an environment that's supposed to protect the contents. Doesn't always do it. The loss rate of time capsules is phenomenal. It's protected from the elements versus secured from the elements. I'm sorry, versus unprotected. It's kind of it's supposed to be a systematic sample, unlike the luck of the draw sample that you get from dig sites. There's a little problem with that too, because it's systematic, but it may also be biased. You're on your own with dig sites, and with time capsules, they try to provide some sort of a way that people in the very distant future can understand it. Finally, instead of shards and fragments, you usually have complete artifacts and documents. William E. Jarvis, the great, and I mean great, historian of time capsules, talks quite a bit about interstellar arcs and transmissions in his book on the history of time capsules. And he describes time capsules as slices of culture that are sent forward to future generations to inform them. They are sent forwards typically, partly in a mood of self-expression and look what we did, but so they're also meant to be a gesture to the future. And he refers to space-time capsules as slices of culture that are sent beyond Earth, and these include both artifacts and interstellar messages. I've had some interesting discussions with some of my friends from physics about whether space-time should be hyphenated, but that's how Jarvis does it. Okay, now, what are the challenges for SETI? We need to select a destination, possible audience, select the content, that is the slice of culture, compose the message, transmit the message, come up with what we can to prevent degradation of the message over time, and then also develop registration and tracking procedures. One of the great reasons that time capsules are lost is people forget about them. They get paved over in parking lots. Buildings are constructed on top of them. One time capsule, when they went to open it, it turned out it wasn't there. It was still sitting in the Washington State House in Olympia. They had forgotten to bury it. So, I mean, the time capsules do have their problem. And Doug and other people have suggested that we need registration or tracking procedures, and I'll get back to that. Now, this is one of the more larger and more complex time capsules, the Crypt of Civilization. All these artifacts that you see here from the late 1930s, it was sealed in 1940. And whereas most time capsules have a destination of say, 50, 100 years, even less. If we look at Zaitsev's transmissions, they're aimed pretty much at about 50 years away. This has the phenomenal end date of 8113. Not only 8113, but May 28th, so we have to hope that the calendar doesn't change and whoever opens it doesn't screw up because of that. The reason for 8113 is that the person who put it together concluded that, we were halfway through the civilization. He had some specific criteria for that, and we would be through civilization at 8113. And so this would tell people about civilization up to 1940. And it has a remarkable parallel to the kinds of things we have to deal with. Consult on selecting the comments. Devices to teach English to the crypt's finders. They may not speak English at that time. Playback and viewing machines, ways to generate electricity, and so forth. And there's a huge amount of stuff there. It's really fascinating. You can find out a lot about it without buying a book by going to the Oglethorpe University website, which is where the time capsule is. And it used the best available preservation techniques at the time. And they're really pretty awesome. However, better preservation techniques are available today, and more modern stuff talks about those in quite details. Well, there's an international time capsule registry. And supposedly, one of the wonderful things about space exploration, SETI, anything to do with space, is you get on the internet. It may or may not be true. It may have been true. It's kind of true. But you will find reference to the International Time Capsule Society registry. And this is a list of what they want to do. They want to register time capsules and track them. And I tried to find the International Time Capsule Society so that I could talk to them before the talk. And I kept looping back to these pages that made it seem as if it existed, but no evidence that it existed. There was even a registration page that you could fill out, but there was no way to tell where it was going to go. So I sent an email to the one name that I could find associated with this at Oglethorpe. And I said, "Dear sir, I am preparing a talk on interstellar communication and would like to know more about the International Time Capsule Society." And for some reason, I never heard from him. But in fairness, we may hear before too long. So we can deal with artifacts, the ARCs. We can deal with interstellar radio messages. Those are both identified as specific ways to inform the future by Jarvis, who was a librarian, and apparently this was his hobby and his life work. I can't find any trace of him at this particular point. This book came out about 2003. So there's even a physical resemblance in some ways between a spaceship and a time capsule. This is the 1940 capsule. It has a much more ambitious much less ambitious time span, only 6113. It was inspired by Oglethorpe. But you can sort of see it's got these ways to inform the future, explanation of what's there. It's hardened as much as possible. Everybody here, I'm sure, is aware that Pioneer and Voyager are carrying messages developed by people associated with SETI, Frank Drake, Carl Sagan, John Lomberg, I believe, and probably several other people, slowly moving its way out of past the solar system. Here's a DNA arc. The idea behind the DNA arc is that the way we can inform people, maybe even resurrect ourselves, or I say people very loosely, is through putting DNA in an arc. And if you miss that one, there's always solstice, where you can have a fraction of your cremains sent into orbit. And it's a wonderful website. And Gordon Cooper, an astronaut who died recently, is one of they call them participants. Okay, I guess that's as good a name as any. Whoops. Okay, Keo satellite, didn't make it. Great idea. The idea would be to orbit this very bright satellite around Earth. It would be there for 50,000 years. Then it would come down. It would remind people of our identity. In 50,000 years, it would refresh people's memories. And any spaceship that happened to come by would be certain to notice it. The problem is that the founder passed on before it could be flown. And this is essentially, this itself is frozen in time since about 1999. But it had great ideas. Again, instructions. Here's how you do it. Here's what we got. You have to go through the same kind of mental procedures with any kind of message. Commemoratives. One person, I'm not sure if it was Eugene Cernan, but he smuggled the Bible to the moon. It was discovered when there was one little red spot, 1 pixel, in a picture of a left-behind rover, and it turned out it was a Bible that he took. Now, the astronauts can take amount of personal things, but it's like this, about the size of a big glasses case. Of course, we separate church and state, but that's personal. It's not an act on the part of NASA or the government. A more harrowing journal went by this microfiche Bible. It took 3 missions to get it there, but it got there, and it represented a tremendous victory for the Apollo Prayer League over the American Atheist Association. Okay, and it was very controversial. There was a league that of people that would pray for Apollo. I think it was about 690,000 active participants, and it was opposed. I couldn't believe it. I had surgery earlier this year, and one guy came in to, I think, check to see how many marbles I lost during the anesthetic. We talked a little bit. It turned out his mother was some sort of block leader for the Apollo Prayer League. And I thought, maybe I don't have all my marbles if somebody comes in off the hospital corridor to talk about things like that. John Lomberg's portrait. Oh, okay. 20. How many? 5 to go. Okay. Portrait of Humanity, Destined for Titan. Never made it, but the picture was very carefully composed. Interstellar radio messages. This is, you're fairly familiar with this stuff. The Arecibo transmission presents this design with pixels. And for scientific interstellar radio messages, Zaitsev points out that what we have to do is we have to point them. I may have gotten some of these from other people too. You've got to have enough power, and they've got to be decoded, easy to be some kind of key so people can understand it. And in 2012, Zaitsev identified 17 transmissions or arcs that he thought might have a chance of making it. So his were sent from Evpatoria radar installation in the Ukraine, and there was a series of these. This is lifted right out of his paper. They went by names like Cosmic Call, Teenage Message, and a message from Earth. And there were numerous transmissions, and all of them, except except the message from Earth. And the distances are shown in the final column there. Well, again, you find the same pattern. Rosetta Stone. Here's what we're trying. Here's something to help you. The biliteral image glossary here. Here's pictures. Maybe this will help you. Greetings from Earth. Hi, we're here. Flags of the world. Musical selections, including classical, pop, and folk. And greetings from Earth. Now, I'll simply pass by this pretty quickly, but it's always amused me that Zaitsev used the theremin, which produces eerie music that is considered high class by Russians, but used for other purposes in science fiction. So we want stuff that's conspicuous, identifiable product of intelligence, not some quirk of nature. We want rich content. I think it's Seth that pointed out you want to get as much information in there as you can. None of this hello there in the back of the universe. Can you hear us? You really want it to be consequential, and it's got to be something that conveys meaning. And I would argue, I'm not going to do it here, but I think there's been so much deceptive use of radio in the history of radio that you've got to try to make it seem trustworthy and safe. Okay, if you doubt that, look at the history of radio in psychological warfare or in the Cold War, and radio can be a pretty nasty thing. So, recommendations. I really do think it's appropriate to somebody like SETI scientists or some organized group or international group or some institute somewhere to assume leadership in the ongoing development and deployment of interstellar messages. And you just don't jump in and do it as a lark. You don't do stunts. You don't do it for publicity. Yeah, there's a little bit of self-promotion, but you're really making a gesture to ET, and you're also, because we're using radio, you're inviting a response. And as in other areas of space, we looked at precedents and prototypes. I think that time capsule is extremely useful, and there's a lot of stuff on time capsule, recent stuff, such as don't use anything that can get contaminated, don't use anything mechanical, forget about sending your MOS-DOS disk 1.2 computer messages and things, and we can learn more from more studies of time capsules. So it was fun to do, and I thank you for being here, and I thank Doug especially for inviting me to be part of this.
On time, there are about 10 minutes for questions and discussions of this paper. And raise your hand and I'll come around with a microphone so that we can get this recorded. Yeah. And probably introduce yourself as you make the question.
Yeah, hello, my name is David Dunier from Lund University, Sweden. I have one question or a comment. There is actually one type of time capsules that are constructed everywhere around the world nowadays for storing nuclear waste. And that's a rather similar case to interstellar communication, because that will be a time capsule to storing this dangerous stuff for up to 100,000 years.
That's a great comment. Yes, I think Gregory Benford is one who has worked on this, and I think Frank Drake actually participated in the project. How do you create a warning that's good for people who aren't people? Very unlikely to be people, in the way we think of them. And they came up with a multitude of techniques, and the techniques that are most relevant for us in SETI is the kinds of pictures and physics diagrams and so forth that they use to try to inform people, and that's a great prototype. Yes.
Next question.
Doug Vakoch. Al, can you say anything about how the objects, how the physical artifacts in the Oglethorpe crypt were selected? Do they say anything about the criteria? Was it?
Okay, well, actually I read Jarvis's book a long time ago, but they did do consulting. They talked to the National Bureau of Standards, for example. But if you look at the actual artifacts, it included things like the original film, the original master film for Wizard of Oz, dictaphone, typewriter, things like that. There was a lot of consultation, and it was really a major event. Now the problem with this 8113 thing for them is that they recommended that it be stored within a building. So you know, the trust is that 8113, year AD, the Phoebe Hearst Hall at Oglethorpe University will still be standing with this wonderful safe-like door going into what was once a swimming pool. But yes, there's a lot of consultation. And of course, it was 1939, so you got greetings from such luminaries as Benito Mussolini and Adolf Hitler and other world characters and things. But there's a tremendous amount of, you can get a lot of that online. I suspect some was seat of the pants. Now they had a device for trying to translate so that people in the future could read it. And I didn't get the book out of storage, but the way I remember it was sort of a pictograph kind of thing, and probably laughable in terms of that amount of time. So, but it's a fascinating thing, and they really tried hard, and we're talking 1939.
Good, thanks.
Thank you. Carrie Patterson. My question involves how many of these messages have been impulsed or started by people in the English-speaking world. Do you have any idea, percentage?
No, I don't. I know that worldwide the estimate is about this 25,000 time capsules, but you have to remember that time capsules include little brass things about this big that show the newspaper for August 1st, 1957, when your building was dedicated. But if you're going into the heavy-duty stuff, there's the Westinghouse. My guess is ones that have any chance, but there's relatively few. But I'm sorry, I can't give you an honest number. But there's zillions of little. I mean, you lay a cornerstone for a building, and our president, in a little bronze case or something. Serious ones for Interstellar, I don't think there's a lot. Plus, we could do it with other techniques, holographs, and microfiche, what have you, for if you could reach it by space travel, which is dubious.
Dominique Lestel from Paris. Two short questions. First one is about culture. Does it exist non-Western time capsules? First question.
Okay.
And second question is, do we have in this time capsule informations about stuff like cooking recipes or ways to make love and stuff like that?
Well, Oglethorpe really has a broad representation. If it has cooking recipes, I don't know, but it was supposed to get lots of different things involved in it. I don't know about non-Western. I have to now make a confession which complicates the talk beyond belief, and that is, so I'm just going to make it, and, I'm sorry. Okay. I like being friendly with the local audience, even if the wider audience sometimes doesn't get it all. I'm sorry. Could just say that one more time very briefly, the question.
Other questions? Two questions about non-Western capsules,
Yes.
and then about
Okay, yes,
cooking
and then I said
recipes
that
and ways of making
There's all
love.
kinds of time capsules by other definitions. Buried city would be a time capsule, for example. If you define it as slices of culture frozen in time, tombs, monuments, and so forth around the world. Now, I don't know about any specific effort to develop a non-Western time capsule as a time capsule as compared to, a sealed tomb or something like that. They may exist, but I haven't heard, I don't know about them.
No, but I mean about contemporary time capsules. Do we have China's time capsules, for instance, or?
I really don't know. These are the ones I know about. And I read the book that I read on that was some time ago. But it seems to stress Western. You're correct.
Well, I've got a question, Al. It's Jill Tarter. I was surprised you didn't mention the Long Now Foundation and the project to build a clock that will work 10,000 years in the future, and also to keep a history of humanity as part of that project. Seems to me that that's a self-perpetuating time capsule, and unless they have to remove the old history to make room for the new history, they run out of room.
That's a good point. The clock will belong now, and that's on Earth, of course, and that's a great project that somebody's going to have to be around to find. If I understand your comment on it, yeah, there's a lot of good stuff on time capsules in general. These are the and somebody could come here and find time capsules. I mean, they don't have to be official. They have to be something that can be found and reconstructed. If I followed the drift of the question, if I didn't, give me another holler.
No, that was it. I was just another kind of time capsule that might have taken care of some of the shortcomings of the other ones that you mentioned. And then the other project is you showed the image that John Lomberg created to represent humanity. But he is also hopefully going to be leading a project to do a new self-portrait of Earth that will be crowdsourced, and that will go on to the New Horizons spacecraft. So in the spirit of the Voyager records, this will be uploaded into the spacecraft when it's finished its scientific mission. And then, depending on how long power can be kept, that digital message will be preserved, and the bits won't rot for thousands of years, but probably not long enough, definitely not long enough to reach the stars. So to be of any use, it will have to be intercepted.
Yeah, well, there's the Keo satellite, which is supposed to just orbit Earth so that when somebody reaches us, they can pick things up. I think, frankly, as a radio astronomer, you won't be surprised to hear that broadcasting is sometimes considered superior to time capsules because you don't have to actually travel those distances. There was something on the tip of my tongue. I almost lost it. If I get it again, there's Solstice. There's a lot of satellites out there that that people hope will find, or either we will rediscover, or others will find them, or they'll eventually crash back to Earth to be found by whatever's here at that time. And I think what's the most fascinating part to me, I mean, there's unbelievably challenging technical aspects to this. Just sort of, as you know, as a radio person, just sort of wing, sending things off into the ether. But it's really interesting kind of concept.
Okay, another question.
Thank you. Sherry Wells Jensen. I'm curious about the wisdom of leaving, since it's right here on Earth anyway, of leaving a time capsule alone for that amount of time. It seems like you're almost guaranteeing yourself that you're going to be incomprehensible if you let that much time go by.
Well, there's two problems, okay? And one is that people forget about it. So, for example, there was a Star Trek time capsule, and when they tried to find it, they realized it had been paved over and a building was put on top of the pavement. You know, this was supposed to be for the distant kind of future. So, you know, you probably, if you're really going to do this in any serious way, you probably want to send out, have quite a few different time capsules, and it sounds fun and easy, and there's zillions. The loss rate, I can't remember the exact number, but the loss rate is very, very high.
It seems to me like the wise thing to do might be to arrange a system via which you check in every 100 years or so that you can reinterpret things and say, yeah, that's almost incomprehensible, but we still get it. Okay, we'll put a note on it, we'll put it back.
Well, it's funny, I don't remember mentioning this, but there is a registry for time capsules. And I wasn't paying attention to my own talk at some point. So I wrote the person that put the registry together. Let's see, and I said, hi, I'm giving a talk on interstellar time capsules and so forth. I never got a response. And I'm not sure if it was just that he didn't get it or was afraid to, you know, send me an answer and things. You know, there are attempts to register. If you go on the internet, you find it right away. Go to Oglethorpe University and look at the time capsule. Everything almost always loops back to that. But then there's references made to things that you can't track down.
Thank you.
I think it's a lot of fun, and whatever's going to come of it, I don't really know.
Okay, let's thank our speaker.
Thank you very much.